and there are 10 more utilities or states who are building partnership, like UP, Haryana, and Bihar has built partnership with ESL. So that's where the transformation hangs in balance. And while the discussion remains that utilities have to take a call, the fact remains that utility is not a single entity. We are talking about 700 decision makers all across circles. We are talking about 80 DISCOM leaders. We are talking about 30 state regulators and the state decision makers. And then the entire ecosystem will move. Meanwhile, what others can do is standardize, standardize, and standardize. I have congratulated Microsoft for taking the lead in creating this platform for discussion. I have an advice for them as well, for all technology providers. There has been a round of technology infusion in utility, and what we have seen, and currently I am seized of the matter and aware that there is a very good investment and there is an upfront capex kind of an orientation where hardware is very robust, solidly built with the capacity to multiply twice over in terms of what you would like to do today, what you are doing on the day of commissioning. You can do twice that job or more than that as far as hardware is concerned. As far as software is concerned, there are built, which are platform is built, value is proposed, but that's only on what is asked for. The jing is not built. I have been discussing, giving them in hints that the jing part of their current product should be made available to for consumer to actually start thinking in terms of what can happen. What Mr. Lakshmanan says in terms of transformation, what Mr. Rawal has said in terms of getting value proposition from this investment, those are to be driven by those consumers, those utility engineers. And unless they get engaged with your platform and solutions through the ever new tools which you continue to bombard them, which currently give them a sense that what is delivered is not suitable for what they are looking for or what you are saying the jing will come from, and that detach those users and that actually detach this value proposition and that actually hinders the entire journey. So the technology providers, they have to rethink how they would like to, in this second round of technology infusion, they would like to put their value proposition, how they would like to build their price, how they would like to offer the solutions to the through the EPC contractors or through the AMI service provider, so that that consumer of those 700 circles, those superintending engineers, those regulators, those state decision makers, they continue to feel the jing which can come from these platforms, and they continue to engage and derive that value which will which will be a struggle on the day the system is commissioned, and it has to be driven derived in those 7 or 10 years lifetime. So your commitment, the technology provider's commitment, the money you are charging on the day zero, your commitment should not die down on 0 - 1 month. It should be available for 0 + 3 years. How you build those partnerships is the differentiation you have make, and that's where AMISP is the leader like ESL, and I would like 5-10 more leaders to be able to do that transformation. Utilities, yes, we are there with them. They are piece of the matter, they are ready. Thank you. I'll close with these remarks.
Yeah, so no, you have raised a very pertinent point, and that too, BMI connected discussion with the Navtej. So Navtej, we heard Mr. Lakshmanan, we heard Mr. Srivastava, Mr. Ral, and Mr. Agrawal and Mr. Mishra. So everyone is talking about the niche technologies which are coming, and as Mr. Rawal, who's taking a big portfolio right now from IntelliSmart side, smart meter adoption across India level, and creating a backbone, and that too so on cloud and new solutions which are pretty much available. You know very well that all these solutions are pretty much available on cloud or technology is pretty much available rather than reinventing the solutions. So what is your view? And the point which Mr. Mishra raised, very pertinent point. So over to you, Mr. Navtej.
No, thank you. I know you're actually short of time, so I won't keep this more than 2 minutes. I've heard the opportunities which were described. I've also heard about the challenges here. I think the only commentary I would put is that, the challenges will not go away. They will only keep rising because, what used to be a very linear approach to power, I'm a power sector engineer by background, right? What used to be a linear approach to design has now actually been modified by, the concept of exchange at the center of it. And the moment you have the exchange, when I say exchange, it's an exchange of any type. It's an exchange of power, it's an exchange of pricing, it's an exchange of inter-regional movement, whatever you call it. So when the moment you have exchange at the center of anything, and you have the market, by the way, driving it, and consumers at the periphery of it, you will have all sorts of fluctuations and challenges coming in, right? So I think we have to just assume that these will continue. I think the only thing I would say from a technology provider perspective is that the second piece you should realize is that when technology is getting designed, it actually has to design with, you mentioned standardization. It has to be designed with lots of standardization in mind, because ultimately it is it has to be scalable, right? So our push, by the way, as much as possible, is to remain at literally the infra layer level, infra and the platform level. So that what we do is we actually provide the backbone on which pretty much all other intelligent systems can ride off. And so that is piece number one. The second push from our side is to make sure that we minimize capex as much as possible, and literally get into some sort of an OPEX or a consumption mode. Okay, because what it does is that when you're doing a massive infrastructure investment like a country of India, you put unnecessary burden on generating all that monies on day one, right? And what we try to do is actually make sure that, and that is why the cloud is important. It's not so much that it's important because that's what we all have invested in. It's important because it allows people to take advantage of scaling up and scaling down. And thus, by the way, at least making sure their cash flow is managed. So that is piece number two, right? Piece number three is that at least from Microsoft perspective, the focus is now on life cycle with the customer, not one-time sale and getting away. So when we would do Windows, Windows on-prem, which would be lifecycle licenses, what it also does is that you're also, by the way, once you've done, you moved away from the customer. But these technologies, as Mr. Mishra mentioned, they're evolving so rapidly that frankly, if we do that, we'll actually be doing a disservice to the market, right? So from our side, I think you will see that there are three different pushes we will have. One is to standardize as much as possible on the platform and the infra level. Number two, as much as possible, have OPEX based models and not CAPEX based. And number three, partner for life cycle, not partnered for one time. And the moment you take these three, the corollaries are very simple. The corollaries are we have to invest in you and your people in skilling them so that they can use it as much as possible. And number two, we are actually looking, as I was mentioning in my previous panel, we are looking at doing the right proof of concepts so that it actually gives the industry something to, bank on and actually then use it to scale across, right? So those would be our 3+2 priorities, right? The last two priorities are around skilling and POCs, right? And frankly, with the audience here and some of them we are in touch with and others I would like to get in touch with separately. I think we are actually, all I can do is we can assure you we are behind on your journey with you, and we are vested in India for the long term, right? So we will try to make sure all of you are successful in whatever you endeavor to do. Thank you, Vineet.
Thank you, Navtej. Thanks. And it's very pertinent in this requirement. You have talked about OPEX models. Everyone is moving towards the OPEX model because days gone when utilities were considering on the CAPEX model. So thanks all the panelists that they spare time for this discussion. And I hope that audience could get some more insight from the discussion from PSU side and from technology provider side. Thanks a lot once again, and have a nice day and have a nice weekend also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vineet. know more on what is the innovation taking place in healthcare, we now have a panel moderated by Ms. Priyanka Agarwal, Managing Director and Partner, BCG. I invite Priyanka to now begin the panel and introduce the panelists.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's indeed a pleasure and a very opportune time to be discussing, the topic that we have for our panel, which is innovation in healthcare in time of crisis. Let me first of all take the opportunity to introduce a very esteemed set of panelists that we have from the public sector, both from the central level and from the state government level, to discuss some of what they're seeing in terms of challenges, also some of what they're seeing in terms of opportunities. So let me first of all welcome Mr. Neeraj Kumar Bansod. He is the Director, Directorate of Health Services in the Government of Chhattisgarh. He is a 2008 batch IAS officer of the Chhattisgarh cadre. He works in the hotbed of the Naxalite movement in Chhattisgarh, that is Sukma district, and has shown a lot of sheer determination to take a lot of challenges head on. He was also the CEO of the Bilaspur Zilla Panchayat and did fantastic work there as well. He is also a BE in production engineering from Maharashtra. Welcome, Mr. Bansod, to the panel discussion. We also have Dr. Madan Gopal. He's a senior consultant health with Niti Aayog, Government of India. Have personally had the pleasure to work with Dr. Gopal over the last many months, and have seen the leadership that he's bringing to the progress of health care sector in India. He is an MBBS MD and has been working on issues related to health system reforms and strengthening the systems in India for more than 28 years. He has worked on a variety of projects across health sector in India. One of the most prominent ones was RSBY, Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, which we all know has gone a long way in providing access to the sections of the society in India. He was awarded the National Award for Excellence in Implementation of RSBY for his outstanding achievements. He's currently working with Niti Aayog, the Apex think tank, as a senior consultant, and is contributing both to COVID, but the overall sector transformation, including Ayushman Bharat. Welcome, Dr. Gopal. Pleasure to have you on the panel. We also have Dr. Arundhati Chandrasekhar, the Mission Director for NHM in Karnataka. She is an MBBS, also postgraduate diploma in hospital administration, also an MBA. Other than her current post as a Mission Director of NHM, she's also served many other departments over her long career, including Commissioner of Food and Civil Supplies, Director of Women and Child Development, and many other sectors where she's contributed. Welcome, Dr. Arundhati. Would love to have your perspectives.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me just set the context. And of course, Mitul, how can I forget Mitul? We have Mitul Patel, Executive Director, Strategic Growth, Microsoft India. Again, someone I've had the pleasure of discussing the vision and the health system transformation in India that he's been passionately driving from as well. And he's also a good friend. So welcome, Mitul, as well. Let me kick us off by a very brief context, actually. So the topic of today's discussion is innovation in healthcare in the time of crisis. I feel it's a very opportune time and where we have all of you together to see how we can progress forward. Perhaps the last 7 months have only exacerbated or shown us even more the challenges that we face in healthcare delivery in India. I always talk about the healthcare sector of India in terms of the iron triangle. So we simultaneously face challenges on cost, on access, and on quality. And as we know, this is called iron triangle because making an impact to any one of those actually starts to create trade-offs on the other. And I feel like COVID-19 in many ways exacerbated these challenges, but also showed us glimmers of hope of how much can be done when we put our minds to innovation, when we put our minds to working together between the public and private sector. So it's a very opportune time to discuss this topic. Let me just kick us off right from Niti Aayog. Dr. Gopal, the question for you, you've seen this whole crisis unfold firsthand over the last 7 or 8 months. What started as a health crisis but has truly become a humanitarian and economic crisis. You've also been part of all the discussions on how we've been handling the crisis, how innovation, maybe digitization, it has shown us some glimmers of hope of how we can also tackle, some of these challenges. So what is your perspective on what are the more tangible outcomes that we have seen over the last few months, or what do you expect to see driven by this over the next, 12 months or so? Under the frame of innovation and perhaps also more specifically technology, given that NDHM was just announced by the Prime Minister on 15th August.
Okay, thank you, Priyanka. It's very interesting because as the pandemic is progressing, it has given an opportunity to stop, introspect and think where we stand and where we want to go. It has given us an opportunity where we are going, where we are moving. So that opportunity has been utilized when the pandemic struck, when the lockdown was there, and we were grappling with the issue of providing treatment to the people, how to treat the non-COVID patients. At that time, we utilized this opportunity because in India, as per there were many rulings from the court saying that the teleconsultation, WhatsApp consultation, everything were illegal. We took this opportunity and saw that how we can help the people who are non-COVID, who require a constant care, who can be managed remotely by a group of experts. Experimentation, that legality was being pushed, and you have seen the resultant in the form of telemedicine guidelines. That's the first of innovation which has happened, and it has revolutionized it. Now you are having many platforms which are offering this telemedicine consultation. That thing has opened a very big. It has opened in a very big way. That was one of the important highlights which has happened during this COVID times. Apart from that, you see that initially it was a privilege to have a video conference in any conference or any summit. Now it has become a part and parcel of the life. In that way, we have innovated. Previously, with the states, it used to that people used to travel to this. If you look at the 2009 and 10 epidemic, which we also have the similar kind of thing, we had it was very difficult to coordinate. Now the coordination with the states, even right up to the district level, has become easy, and you can have virtual conference with all the people. And on a day-to-day basis, we don't know. I am having 2 video conferences now. In my one conference is going on, and the other I'm in the panel. So that kind of thing could not happen had he not innovated the way which we are functioning. Thus, having said this, regarding the digitalization thing, we were grappling with the issue. COVID has given us an opportunity to think where we are lagging. If you look at the international publications, even after 8 months into the epidemic, 8 to 9 months effectively into the epidemic, how many research publications we were able to add to the knowledge base of the globe is negligible because we don't have personalized health records. We are grappling with that issue. We were grappling this issue for the last 1 decade, where serious efforts were made in the form of integrating the program data, in the form of developing a platform in which all the programs can write, so that with a common identifier, all the program data could be talking to each other. That is integrated health information platform. Apart from that, when Ayushman Bharat was launched, there was a chance that we should be having a platform or a stack where all the program data, individual data can write, and so that we can have information and we can add to the knowledge. Suppose everybody was saying that BCG offers a protection against the COVID infection. So where is the data? We don't have any records. The immunization data we don't have. So digitalization was more or less in card when the stack was made into a blueprint, and the blueprint was launched as a digital mission. Now it is in a pilot phase. This was an opportunity to push all these reforms. Had it not been COVID, we could not have done this thing in this space. Apart from this, another thing, innovations which are happening is that in any epidemic, the important thing is contact tracing and tracking the patient, which has been made possible with the use of technology. you will find many apps. One of the apps which was supposed to function was Arogya Setu to contact tracing, though the efficacy and other things, they are something else. But if you look at the way people are thinking, they are thinking that we could help the tracking. If you look at the RRT softwares, many of the states, they are having a software for tracking and tracing the patients. Essentially, for management of any pandemic or any epidemic is how you manage the response. Response is managed in the form of identifying the contacts, tracing them, isolating them, treating them. And technology and digitalization is playing a very, very useful role in this. Had it not been this, it would be a very, very difficult situation for us. We won't be knowing what is the exact magnitude of that. You can now project that which are the areas which are likely to have based on the data which is available. That now, as the data is coming into the public domain, it's very interesting that all the crowdsourced data is now coming. People are playing with the data. It won't have been possible without thinking on use of the technology. Now you can triangulate the data from many sources, right from the Our World in Data, Worldometer to WHO site, as well as COVID.org. All the countries, they have made COVID.org for everything. Without that digitalization and technology, now they're using technology to that extent. Now you can have all the data, and more or less the data is across all the portals is more or less similar. It's hardly a changes there. That kind of thing has made. In the coming days, I think this is a thing which is going to stay, and virtually we are getting connected, and it can improve into the better management of things. Apart from this, one of the most important technology and the digital thing which we have used is monitoring the patients. How we are doing the monitoring of the patients, because when during the initial period, Priyanka, you realize that when the cases were increasing, there were reports that there is no bed space.
Yeah.
Then the innovative strategy came in the form of home-based treatment, in which lot of people, they have used the technology in providing home-based treatment. Yeah. Now, if a person is positive today, even if you look at the laboratory data of RT-PCR, it's all digitalized. You can't have a RT-PCR test done without entering your data and getting a number and confirmation or SMS on your mobile number. That kind of tracking is there so that you know that the person who immediately are positive, the district surveillance team will contact you and they will provide treatment to you. And whatever modality. The home-based care took a very important aspect into this. When the home-based care come, then there was a question how to monitor the patients. There comes the use of the medical gadgets in the form of the SpO2 monitor. It was a simple gadget which has at least made the treatment of COVID very easy, and it has allayed the fears of the people. Now we are trying to use the technology for at least see that how an appropriate COVID behavior can be put into place. Virtual meeting is one of the way of doing that. We have to see that how we take it to the next level. That's why you are also not masking, where I am also masked, others are not masked, because we are in an isolated bubble. Right. We are in our own space and we are doing virtually. Otherwise, if it is in a conference room, then we would be this. This kind of innovations are coming. It is moving in the right direction. It has given us an opportunity to stop, think, innovate, and see that how we can improvise and the life should move on.
Right.
These are my initial comments. Thank you, Priyanka.
No, thanks a lot, Dr. Gopal. I very much relate to, and we've all been watching the innovations that have been happening over the last 6 months, at least at the center level. Maybe it's a good time to bring in some of the state perspectives. So Dr. Mr. Neeraj Kumar, I'd like to invite your perspectives. Are you still online? I can't see you anymore. I think Mr. Bansod may have dropped. Let me come to you, Dr. Arundhati. My question, hearing all of what Dr. Gopal just described, whether it was the launch of a national telemedicine guideline and platform, a lot of innovations in terms of testing, tracing, but also some of the more fundamental innovations this may have started. I'd like to hear your views from how is this translated at the state level? And what are some of the challenges that you face on the ground at the state level in terms of some of these innovations? I know that there is an attempt to converge data into one uniform architecture, but data still sits in many silos. So I'd like to hear your on-the-ground perspectives from how is this translating at the state level? What do you see progressing? What are the challenges that you find?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Priyanka. It's a pleasure for me to be a part of this panel. Am I audible?
Yes, very clear. Yes.
Okay, thank you. As you know, Karnataka is sort of an IT hub with Bangalore at the center. So we have undertaken a lot of innovations even before Government of India started a few of the things. So, and it has always been a combined team effort with us, the public and private sector, especially during the COVID times. It has been a combined team effort. Private sector has come forward in all aspects, the corporates, the hospitals, the private hospitals, everyone has come forward and pitched in our effort. I'll just like to say that in all aspects of management of COVID, we say the 3 T's, trace, test, and treat. So we have used the 4th T, the technology, in all these 3 aspects. So from the beginning, other than what Dr. Drupal said, I would just like to highlight few things that state has done. One is, we know that the vulnerable people, aged people, people with comorbidities, they are more prone to COVID. We realized in the early stages. So what we did was did a house-to-house survey, identified in each house who were the vulnerable, took a phone number, collected a phone number from that house, and this data was digitized. This we gave it to our helpline. We have 14410, which is Apta Mitra, which is a state-run helpline. And they started calling up on alternate days or periodically to these people to check if they had any INI-SARI symptoms so that they could be traced early and brought for testing. That was one of the early initiatives. The other was during the early days of pandemic, what we did was this, we came up with the Corona Watch, where the address was marked on the doodle map of the positive patient. And even earlier we used to collect the movement history, trace the movement history of each and every one for the last 1 week to 10 days. So which all the places he had moved or she had moved in the last 1 week was mapped on the doodle map, including the duration. If it was more, because it is significant, as we say, if they're there for more than 20 minutes or 30 minutes. So those are the areas where we had to concentrate for contact tracing. So this was available to all the district. This was done at the state level, available to the district level officers, the taluka level and the block level officers. So they could identify the areas where the person had visited, even if it was extended to another district. So he would have got admitted in one district, but he would have traveled in another district. So this was also mapped. So the person could check, go to that area and try to trace those contacts on that particular day. So that was one of the innovative things we did. And other was a quarantine watch. So earlier we used to quarantine the international travelers. These were the early initiatives which we have taken. We used to quarantine international travelers. Actually, our first case was of an international traveler. So after that, we started it in a strict manner, the quarantine thing. So the quarantine watch app provides for the person to upload a selfie at least once a day or twice a day. So it ensures along with the time and the date, so that GPS thing, so that we know that the person is quarantined and is not moving around anywhere. It is actually initially it was supposed to be twice or thrice, once in 2 hours, 3 hours they had to upload. So initial period it was once in 2 hours, then we relaxed it for 4 times a day, and now it is twice a day. All the quarantine people upload the things, and if the person is not uploading, one of the field persons goes to the house to check why this person is not uploading. Is he at home or is he moved out? So that was another thing which we had done. One more innovative thing which Karnataka did was this ILI, to identify ILI-SARI patients at an early stage. We introduced this pharma application where each of the pharmacies, we have about 10,000 odd pharmacies, registered pharmacies in Karnataka. They were given a login ID and credentials. And if any person came in asking for over-the-counter drugs like an aspirin or anything like Dolo or Procin, the phone number was only the phone number of the person was stated. And the symptom was a drop down, and they had to select whether he had a fever or a runny nose or any kind of symptom, ILI related symptom. And this again, these phone numbers were given to our Apta Mitra helpline. They used to call up this phone number, check if the person was okay, if he really had any symptoms or anyone in the family had the symptoms, And if yes, this data was pushed to the local district or the block level officers. They used to visit the house and ensure that the person who, if he had any symptoms, was tested. The other was the KPME portal. You know, we have a lot of private medical establishments in Karnataka. What we did was that we ensured that all of them uploaded data, only the phone number and the symptom of a patient who came to their institution with any symptoms of an ILI, that is fever or cold or cough. So a phone number was collected. Again, this through Aptamitra, we used to roll out, and an alert would go to the district and the block level officers that such and person went to a clinic, may not be tested, please verify. So we ensured that the testing was done and we identified persons at an early stage. The other was, I think you are aware, Karnataka was a pioneer in the tele-ICU.
Yes.
We were actually started this tele-ICU, where we started because all the districts, as we know, COVID is a new pandemic, and all our medical professionals were not equally competent in handling the pandemic. So it was also a cross-learning was what we think. And we identified few major establishments in Bangalore itself, Narayana Hrudayalaya, Manipal, Columbia Asia, major private sector players also came in. So their specialists used to sit every day, 1 to 2 hours, and take rounds of the ICU across the hospital, district hospitals where the COVID patients were admitted in the ICU. So what was the included from the pulse, BP, the vital statistics, everything was. We used to give their comment on the way forward, and the doctors at the district level used to discuss their challenges and what would be the way forward. And it was a cross learning, and I think we saved many lives during this usage of tele-ICU. Now, and anyway, like Dr. Gopal said, we are using eSanjeevani. We started off late actually. This is the tele-consultation and the tele-OPD. We started a little late because we had our state call center, like I told you, Aptamitra. It also has the telemedicine provision. The person could call 14410 and they would be directed to a concerned doctor. It is on similar lines of eSanjeevani. So we started eSanjeevani little late, but now even eSanjeevani has picked up. So we have a lot of people doing this, and there were a lot of other innovations, including the testing. We ramped up our testing, integrated with the ICMR portal. Now we started with 5 tests actually. In March, in February 23rd, actually we did only 5 tests, and today we have reached about 1 lakh tests per day, almost. Yes. It is 90,000 to 1 lakh tests per day in Karnataka, and majority have been RT-PCR testing. So actually, one of our senior IAS officer always says, he's an IITian, he says that if you can think of something, IT can definitely do it, but it takes some time. And that was the challenge for us, because we used to come up with a lot of ideas, but for us to be implemented in field and then integration with the various applications, like you said, took some time. That was a major challenge, and this APIs with the different things done, because we already had our various applications, and then the government of India also started a few applications. The integration between the two took some time. That was a major challenge for us, working out the APIs, because they were on different platforms. That was only issue for us, but otherwise, we have actually inbuilt the technology into various aspects of COVID management. So that would be, I think, my initial comments. I think I took a long time, but I just wanted to brief about what Karnataka is doing.
Well, thank you, Dr. Arundhati. Those are very, very. I think that's what probably we expect of Karnataka as well, being the hotbed of sort of the technology base of the country. So very delighted to hear, how much has got accelerated in the last few months. When you were talking, I really had 2 thoughts or 2 follow-up questions, and I'll direct one to Mr. Bansod, and actually I have one for Mitul as well, that came up as you were talking. I think so, as I was hearing about all these innovations and what I might call green shoots, so a lot was tried, maybe faster than we ever would have, and brought to what I might call production environment before even, and some of these things may have taken longer earlier. But the question that occurs to me, and this is for you, Mr. Bansod, has some of these started to impact the system strengthening? so that this will last beyond the current crisis? Whatever we have tried in the last few months, and Dr. Arundhati was talking a lot about data integration, saying there was some data coming from pharmacies, there was some data coming from small establishments, some data centrally. But the real question is, have we had enough learning so that we will take them forward and fundamentally strengthen our systems much beyond the current crisis? So I'd love to invite your thoughts on how do you
Yes.
see that playing out in Chhattisgarh or other perspectives?
Yes, definitely, Priyanka. There is a program called Integrated Disease Surveillance Program, IDSP, which was started in 2004 or 6, I remember. And the Integrated Disease Surveillance Program is one of the important programs in which actually any epidemic or pandemic which is taking place in the country or any part of the state, it has very minute details, and in any pandemic it is very important to make a line list of the patients. So now, whereas when before COVID pandemic was there, this IDSP unit used to work in silos, and it used to have its own line list, which was actually which was never integrated into any other systems. Now, because we had a portal which was developed by ICMR, then government of Chhattisgarh with the help of NIC developed one its COVID portal, and now with the sharing of API, we are not only able to make the line list as soon as we gather the data of the RT-PCR, the antigen, and the TrueNAT tests, whatever tests those are conducted on the ground. Parallelly, the line list gets generated, and the line list is actually directly populated into the ICMR portal, and then from the ICMR portal we can actually take the data, and the data of the line list data is actually directed into the other verticals like hospital admission or home-based care, that is home isolation model. Now the things have become so easier. Initially, I remember when Chhattisgarh, we had only 3 cases in the month of May. 14th of May, we had 3 cases. And right now we have almost 2 lakh cases in the month of November. So handling such a huge database for a little program unit like IDSP, it was a very challenging task. And I think we had to somehow, we used to operate through some Google Sheets and Google Docs. Now, then we learned this experience, and we integrated ourselves with the ICMR, and we developed one portal. So as Karnataka NHM MD Madam was speaking, I definitely, and I relate with her that all these initiatives are not happening in one state. In fact, they are actually taking place all across the state, and we are also following in fact, we started the Sanjeevani model a little early than other states. And the home isolation model, we are also, like West Bengal is actually integrating the telemedicine with the home isolation model of care for COVID patients, COVID-19 patients. So I think Chhattisgarh is also planning that way, and we are not only following the e-Sanjeevani and telemedicine in our state, but we are also actually taking advantage. Of course, we are also taking clue and advantage from Karnataka, and we are also operating this tele ICU in. So these are going to be there. Chhattisgarh is a place where northern and Chhattisgarh part of the state is very tribal, very forest, very remote, and very inaccessible areas there. So I think technology is the only solution which can actually create access to better healthcare facilities in the state. Areas like Bastar, where I have worked for 6 years, Bastar, Dantewada, and Sukma. So it's not easy to provide better healthcare because there is a lack of human resource. HR doesn't. We are not able to attract. Definitely, the situation have changed. We are now situation is far better. But still, when it comes to the diagnostic part of it, like providing the radio diagnostics and other solutions, I think we can. There is enough scope, and the systems definitely will be strengthened using the digital technology. And the way ahead definitely is like we have like 17-18 types of software available in the state. There are different national programs which are actually there. So it is very important to integrate the data, and there has to be some sort of integration in the system. So and it will definitely help in the different programs, like especially the programs of like maternal and child health, which is related to immunization. Currently, if we see immunization, we don't have the digital immunization record of the patients. It may help to generate this data using technology, using digital technology. We can have the digital data of the immunization for the healthcare workers. So definitely there is no limit.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bansod. I think the one theme, across both of what Dr. Arundhati said and what you were describing as well, which occurs to me, is the very critical need to have more data integration across different sources, so that actually we can have a fundamental layer on which, on top of which, whether it's in a crisis or otherwise, we can build many apps. And that's where, Mithul, probably, I'd like to bring you in on both actually what you have seen already, but how do you think from your maybe experience across other countries, private sector can also play a role in partnering with the governments to make this happen at scale? What I'm delighted to see, from the comments that have been shared is, that a lot has happened, driven by crisis, but how can this happen at scale and in a sustainable way? And one of the fundamentals of that would be to establish this data integration layer that everyone's speaking about.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Priyanka. Thank you, everyone. It's before I get started, it's been a really painful time for an experience for so many people in the country. And I think we all have a collective opportunity, and we're already working on finding a way to learn from this and then respond and come out much, much stronger. And so I want to thank everyone in the panel here for what you've done, because what you've created so quickly is really saving lives, and it's improving the condition of so many people. And when I think back where we were 6 months ago and where we are today, it's pretty inspiring to see how far we've come and what can happen if we just have the time and the ability to go and create new things based upon the learnings we've had. And, in talking to everyone in the diversity of ideas here, I think if there's a learning that at least we've picked up or we've validated through this process, is that it takes ecosystems to make an impact at the scale we're trying to make. And it wasn't about one group or one part of any organization or any group or any sector making it all happen. It was the citizens had to be connected, NGOs had to be involved, startups came into the picture, corporates did as well, state governments, central governments, international players. And it was everyone somehow figuring out how the best of each other's capabilities could come together to solve a problem that really made what happened possible. Now, we had to go a bit backwards, I think, to your point, in this whole process. We had to go build and create solutions without having, the base foundation in place. There was an urgency. We had to build things like homes, in an analogy, before that foundation was laid, because we just needed something. And so we went a bit backwards. And I think we did really well in finding point solutions, and we were able to come up with what was needed in specific timeframes. But now we have to go back almost and lay that foundation underneath it, so we have a strong platform to do more going forward, and not make this just a crisis response capability, but something that's relevant, forever for the country. And we need this. If I just summarize it all, I think all of us would find it much easier if we had this national infrastructure that can do all the things we've said, but more importantly, unleash the innovation that exists in India. There's so much talent, so much capability, so many people that can solve so many problems we have not even begun to touch, if we give them the right platform on which to go and create and to build and to kind of deliver those solutions. And I think that's what's the most important requirement now. Go back, build that foundation, and then use that foundation to unleash innovation. And so what is this, just learning from all the work we've done together here and other countries in the world, what does this platform look like? It is just that. I'll start off by just emphasizing this word platform. It's not a solution that one group or one company necessarily creates, but it's a base foundation that everyone can build on. And I think it has a few requirements. that we've learned through this process, frankly. The first is that you need information and resources that are validated and available to people, citizens, practitioners, and others. So this availability of validated information at scale is something that's really important. Think back to the first days of that crisis. What was the situation? Where were things? Where did we need to go? It wasn't clear because it was not easy to get that validated information. The second thing was that you need this collaboration and communications fabric. And this was really important. The best ideas we may have, if that frontline worker, that NGO knocking on doors, isn't connected to what's happening in the hospital, isn't happening in what's happening in the state governments, isn't happening in the PMO's office, it breaks down anyway. All the smart ideas we have and all the smart decisions we have don't get implemented at the last mile. And so this communications fabric that goes right from someone knocking on a door in a village all the way through to the Prime Minister's office needs to be in place so we can respond clearly. The third, I think, was this creation, and now we're accelerating it, right, of these government-created universal enablers, I would say, right? Those things like UID and NDHM and UPI, that backbone allowed people to do things, or can allow people to do things faster and more efficiently than anyone in the private sector can help make happen. Now, I think this ecosystem platform where people can come and build is that next layer. The right infrastructure, the right software capabilities, the new technologies that are emerging like low-code development, where someone literally working in a small town can see a problem and then build code and build a solution, using graphical user interfaces, we need to create that. We need to make that available to the population, to all the folks in the world. Now comes what everyone's been talking about. When we have all of this infrastructure, incredible amounts of data is being connected and available. And you need this collaborative data workbench, a place where people can contribute, privacy is managed, regulatory considerations are put in place, and then people can also use. And it's this collective availability of the information and data that's well managed by a custodian that can unleash all sorts of solutions that we haven't even begun to think about. Now, you take that's also nice, it's data. And I think what we've learned here, you can stop at having data on a dashboard and understanding a report to help you make a decision. But the real power of it comes in when it helps you actually think forward, anticipate, and help create solutions and help make decisions. And so the power of analytics on top of that data is something that's really powerful. And again, you need the toolkit available to all the people that are going to use that analytics available. Now, this is not, it's a sequential or a stack that needs to be created for the country. And I think we've got bits and pieces forming as a result of what we've been doing. And now we have to just solidify it and make that available. And I'll just leave with one other thought. While this is going on, we haven't touched in this process the really truly innovative technologies that can change everything. The use of IoT all the way down to someone's home, how artificial intelligence can supplement the capacity or augment the capacity gaps we have in care workers or the ability to make diagnosis. You can actually fill those gaps with the technologies that are available in AI. Augmented reality can make someone who's not a physician or a nurse all of a sudden able to do something in someone's home through the use of augmented reality, etc. And this is coming. And I think India has an opportunity right now to use all of this great scaling technology and leapfrog everything and address and create something that really works for 1 billion people, which no one else in the world has that problem. And we can really leapfrog everyone in the process. So I mean, that's the way we see it, I think, and that's what the learnings are from India. But first of all of this comes through what you've started creating. And I think we're just piecing it together now. So thanks for that. I'll hand it over back to you, Priyanka.
Thanks, Vitul. I think that's a very, I would say, inspirational and visionary set of ideas on what can be. Is my voice echoing or is it clear?
We can kind of hear you, Priyanka. Just
okay.
Keep going.
Yeah. So Mitul, you spoke a lot about the kind of things that can happen when many of these, both the foundational layer, the data, and some of them, the more advanced technologies come in place. It's a very inspirational, I would say, vision of what can be. I guess, what I'd like to probably go around and ask everyone very crisply, because I know we have just a few more minutes left, but for this vision and from what we've already seen, maybe I can just go around and ask everybody, what is the one biggest learning that we must take forward from what we've seen, if that is our vision, to put all these systems together on an infrastructure layer, the data comes together, talks to each other, and on top of which many different applications can start to actually impact, of course, the crisis, but beyond. What is the one biggest learning that you'd like to take forward, but also what is the one biggest challenge that you feel we should be mindful of as we continue on that journey? So I'll ask very brief comments, literally one learning and one challenge. Maybe I can start with you, Dr. Gopal.
One of the interesting thing which I have observed during this pandemic time is everybody talks about use of technology, digitalization of the things, but before that, we have to see that how the practice is brought into the technology, not the vice versa. What we are attempting is we are trying to bring technology into practice, whereas the reverse has to happen. We have to bring practice into technology and see that both mutually complement each other. That's the biggest learning. Otherwise, we will be grappling with technological solution and people will not adopt to that. That's the only comment which I have to say.
Well said, Dr. Gopal. I very much resonate with that. Dr. Arundhati, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I agree with Dr. Gopal. We need to bring both of them on the same platform and going forward. Otherwise, only technology will not help. And without technology also we are lost. So somewhere that balance has to be maintained. Yeah, that is my only thing. Only the challenge would be how are we going to bring this platform together, like Mr. Mittal was saying. How do we build the foundation? That and how fast can we do it would be a challenge, in my view. Thank you.
Fair enough. Mr. Bansod, your thoughts on the same? What are the first steps we may take? What is the learning we should build in as we walk this journey?
I agree with Dr. Madan Gopal and Dr. Arundhati. Both of them definitely use of the technology and digital thing. We will have so many information, so many data, and if we don't have the people to analyze it and implement it, this is the most biggest challenge in the government systems which I have faced so far. We have so many data and so many books. We don't have the know-how or the technical capacity or to actually get this data implemented into the system. So that is, I think, that will be the most challenging thing for the future.
Fair enough, Mr. Bandhu. I find a lot of promise in this discussion and a lot of caution for how we must tread forward carefully. Mithul, any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, no, I think I'll just build on everyone about this challenge and the learnings. And it's two sides of the same coin for me. I think the first one was that the learning was that the innovation capacity of the country is incredible. And, there's so much out there in terms of what people can bring to the table to help solve the problems we have. The flip side of that coin is that there's also lots of innovation and advanced capabilities in other parts of the world. Because especially in a crisis like this, there's others that have walked the path a little ahead of us, and so how are we building on what the world creates and putting our innovation on top of it versus us building from the base and losing time is the challenge that I see. So lots of potential is a big takeaway.
Thanks, Mithul. I think it's been a very enriching discussion. I think, like we've all read and heard, never waste a crisis, which is a sentiment I hear from everybody. And it's in some ways, that's a silver lining out of the huge amount of crisis and pain we've all experienced, is that perhaps we've accelerated our journey towards a better solution and better healthcare delivery by decades and not months. With that thought, thank you so much, everybody, for sharing your very valuable perspectives. It's been a pleasure to be part of this panel. I always learn a lot. Thank you so much for sharing all your perspectives.
Thank you.
Thank you.